This is how Singapore used to look like in 1965, and this is how it looks today. This is how much it would have cost you to buy a house in Singapore in 1965, and this is how much it costs you to buy the same house today. This is how much a Singaporean citizen used to make in 1965, and this is how much he makes today. This makes Singapore average income per person the second highest in the world, right after Luxembourg. What's remarkable, my friend, is that Singapore achieved this transformation without being an oil-rich country. Singapore has a unique mix of ethnicities and religions, with 3 main ethnicities and at least 5 major religions. Singapore had the perfect recipe for disaster, a mix of religions and culture with a side of poverty. But instead, they cooked up progress. So how could Singapore make this happen? In 1965, Singapore gained its full independence. However, instead of celebrating, the situation was entirely different. Singapore was abandoned, left to fend for itself in a jungle of predators. Sounds like the premise of Jumanji, but real life. Back then, Singapore was like a GTA map. Dangerous, chaotic, and everyone was in a gang. Singapore was so poor that its national bird was a mosquito. It was a country riddled with corruption and drowning in severe economic troubles. Amid this turmoil emerged Lee Kuan Yew, a visionary leader with a zero-tolerance approach to chaos. He turned Singapore into the safest, most orderly nation in the world by establishing strict laws and ensuring no one, not even gum, messed with public spaces. In 1965, chaos ruled. Now, if you chew gum on the street, chaos is you. In Singapore, jaywalking feels like auditioning for Prison Break. How did Singapore evolve from a gangland to a grandstand with an economy valued at $530 billion, an unbeatable military, and one of the world's top tourist destinations? In this video, we will uncover why Singapore was the world's ultimate underdog, how was strict laws the first foundation of Singapore's economic success, and the secret playbook that turned tiny Singapore into a giant of the global economy.
My name is Basem Fawzy, and this is World Economy.
You know what happens to any country under British colonial rule? Total exploitation of its resources on every single level. Recovering from such devastation usually takes decades. But stop right there, because Singapore defied that norm. That small island in Southeast Asia, covering just 734 square kilometers, didn't just break the mold, it built a new one and started charging rent. The name Singapore originates from Singapura, meaning Lion City in Sanskrit. Before diving into how the Lion City achieved this remarkable transformation, let's step back to the 19th century. In 1819, Singapore became one of the world's most critical trading hubs, functioning as a vital port for commercial ships, a role similar to the Suez Canal's importance today. I mean, if the Suez Canal had a cousin, it would probably be Singapore, just a bit smaller and much more efficient. This strategic importance drew British attention. Recognizing Singapore's value as a strategic trading hub in Southeast Asia, Britain seized the opportunity. The British East India Company sent Sir Thomas Stamford Raffles to negotiate with the Sultan of Singapore, Hussein Shah Johor, to allow the company to purchase and develop the southern part of Singapore as a British settlement. When life gave Stamford Raffles lemons, he squeezed Singapore dry. And this reminds me of the sponsor of this video, the British Empire, turning trading hubs into their private property since 1819. The British saw Singapore and thought, what a lovely spot, let's take it and call it ours. Classic. Just 5 years later, on August 2nd, 1824, Singapore officially became British territory. After 140 years of occupation and resources stealing, Singapore told Britain, thanks for nothing, we'll take it from here. 140 years is a long time to borrow something. I think it's called theft at that point. The British left Singapore, my friend, with no resources. It's like leaving a party and taking the food and the cheers. Singapore was plagued by financial and administrative corruption, complete lawlessness, and widespread violence. It was even ranked as one of the most dangerous places in the world, with thousands of thefts, murders, and violent crimes happening openly without deterrence. Singapore had become a haven for the most dangerous Chinese mafia syndicates, the Chinese Triads, one of the most notorious organized crime groups both within and outside China. Singapore wasn't just a lion city, it was a jungle full of predators. In the 1960s, my friend, Singapore was the kind of place where even criminals had to watch their backs. Additionally, Britain left Singapore as an extremely impoverished nation with very limited resources. And just to add some extra spice to the situation, they also made sure it was practically next door to the Soviet Union, because who wouldn't want a friendly neighbor with a nuclear arsenal, right? In 1963, concerned that Singapore might be swallowed by the Soviets, the nation chose to merge with the Malaya, now known as Malaysia. Ethnic tensions and conflicts broke out between the people of Singapore, who were made up of Chinese, Malayas, Indians, Asians, Caucasians, and others, and the population of Malaysian Federation. These clashes became so severe that Singapore was forced to leave the Union after just 2 years. That's shorter than most celebrity marriages. At that point, Singapore was like a child abandoned by its mother in a barren desert, with no water or vegetation in sight. The country was in an unprecedented state of chaos. Having heavily relied on the resources provided by the Malaysian Federation, Singapore was now plunged into extreme poverty and soaring unemployment. Diseases spread quickly due to poor sanitation and the hazardous waste scattered throughout the streets. Faced with overwhelming corruption and decline, a strong force was desperately needed to turn the tide. That force came in the form of Lee Kuan Yew. He ran for office, won, and became prime minister. Lee didn't just run for office. In just 3 years, he ran corruption out of town. Lee began by establishing new systems to govern the nation and implementing strict laws to limit financial and administrative corruption within his government and among the people. My friend, the rules he introduced were so strict that if someone spit out gum on the street or crossed the road from undesignated areas, could face penalties such as fines, imprisonment, or even caning. Yes, this was absolutely real. Don't be surprised, anyone who failed to respect public spaces faced severe consequences, including jail time. It was less,
"Hey, don't do that,"
and more, do that and enjoy a ticket to the caning show. But Lee Kuan Yew didn't stop there. He also put an end to the ongoing conflicts among the population and unified Singapore's language. Essentially, he prioritized the nation above all else, ensuring that this principle applied to all religions and ethnic groups. He famously declared, "The nation belongs to everyone, a true United Nations within one nation." One of his most striking statements came in a 1986 interview where he said,
I'm accused often of interfering in private lives of citizens. Yes. If I did not, had I not done that, we wouldn't be here today.
Lee Kuan Yew understood that Singapore's rise depended on its people. He believed there could be no economic progress without investing in individuals and preparing them for success. To achieve this, he introduced modern educational curricula and prioritized the development of teachers, recognizing them as the foundation for shaping future generations. He decided to invest in Singaporeans through education, ramping up overseas scholarships and exchanges to accelerate the country's development. So yes, that's why everyone in Singapore's school system probably knows how to run a company by the age of 12. Singapore established specialized schools and universities to equip its workforce with the necessary skills. The year following 1965 witnessed a manufacturing boom in Singapore. Singapore went from fishing nets to manufacturing jets in just a few years. The government realized that foreign investments would be key to elevating the country's status. They developed a sustainable strategy to attract global companies by offering tax exemptions for businesses investing in specific sectors, tax reductions for new companies, and streamlined procedures to make doing business easier. Singapore placed a strong emphasis on infrastructure development, making significant investments in ports, airports, road networks, now ranked among the world's finest, as well as business hubs and industrial zones. My friend, it was like building a Lego set, but instead of a castle, they built a global trade powerhouse. These advanced infrastructure projects turned Singapore into one of the largest global trade hubs. Many international companies established their regional headquarters in Singapore, drawn by its modern facilities and strategic location. It's like Singapore became the office space provider of the world, but for Fortune 500 companies. The nation's success was rooted in its emphasis on education and workforce development. Today, institutions like the National University of Singapore and the Singapore University of Technology and Design rank among the world's leading universities. They have successfully trained generations ready to enter innovative industries like technology and manufacturing. During this period, Singapore focused on industries such as electronics, oil rig equipment, oil refining, rubber products, and ship repair. The latter was particularly successful, becoming a major driver of its economy. They really nailed it. Literally, they repaired ships better than most people can fix a leaking faucet. It's time to reveal to you, my friend, the secret to Singapore's success, which is a principle unlike any other in the world. Promotions in government positions are never based on seniority. Instead, Singapore focuses solely on merit, awarding positions to those most qualified regardless of age. Even young individuals can rise to the highest administrative and governmental roles if they demonstrate the necessary skills and capabilities. It's like the country's motto is, age is just a number, but skills, those count. This philosophy extends to the selection of economic and political experts. Singapore prioritizes individuals with academic excellence even if they come from very poor families. For instance, two of Singapore's most successful ministers, Lim Hng Kiang, the Minister of Trade, and Chan Chung Sing, the Minister of Industry, came from humble backgrounds. In Singapore, even if you start at the bottom, you can end up as a Minister of Trade. Elsewhere, you might just stay at the bottom. Singapore didn't rely solely on industry to build its economy. It effectively capitalized on every inch of its land to generate revenue. My friend, they have squeezed every inch in that small island to the extent that the average monthly rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the city center is approximately $2,700. At that price, I hope it comes with a butler. Each year, 13.6 million tourists visit Singapore, compared to only 1.1 million tourists versed in Malaysia, for example. This success translated into significant annual revenue amounted to $20 trillion in 2023. From tourism-related activities. Today, Singapore ranks among the world's top tourist destinations. Who knew such a small island could attract so much attention? Talk about making a big impression in a tiny package. Given the influx of tourists, there has been a significant focus on developing hotels and aviation industry. Singapore Airlines, widely acclaimed globally, is now ranked as the world's best for first-class travel, offering luxurious seating, beds, and exceptional service. Singapore Airlines doesn't just fly, you particularly feel like you are on a cloud. And this video is not sponsored by Singapore Airlines. Although I wish it was, I'm pretty sure they pay well. As of 2025, when discussing the richest countries in the world, no, it's not the United States or China, Singapore ranks second in gross domestic product per capita at $153,000, just $1,000 behind Luxembourg. Its total GDP stands at $530 billion, an incredible feat for a country with a population of around 6 million people only. Put this in perspective, that's more than double the GDP of Qatar, which is often regarded as one of the wealthiest nations in the Middle East, with a GDP of $221 billion. When poverty and unemployment hit, Singapore said, wrong house. Singapore now boasts an impressively low unemployment rate of 1.9%. So you might be wondering what's Singapore's secret recipe? That's easy. Hard work, strict laws, and just the right amount of brilliance. Singapore is like that one friend who always seems to figure things out, no matter the odds. In the end, what do you think about Singapore's approach of enforcing strict laws on its population? If another country adopted similar policies, would it achieve the same success? Choose wisely. If you have made it this far, here is the golden rule for success. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell to never miss our future videos. That's it.